And we're live with another podcast. I'm Mike.
Mitch over here.
And today we're doing another podcast on predictions of where we see teams. And today we moved on from the Atlantic.
Yeah, we're moving to the Atlantic from the Metropolitan from last time. Again, we're going to go in reverse order here.
Mm-hmm.
So
You want to start it off this time?
Yeah,
Who's
so
your number 8 in the Atlantic?
I have the Ottawa Senators.
So do I. I feel like that might have been the easiest kind of thing to figure out with this division is Ottawa. There's been a lot of things just going wrong in the
There's
past.
a lot of controversy surrounding the team, whether it be Eric Carlson, their assistant general managers, just a lot of
things going on there.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know what you're going to get out of Carlson, if you even get anything out of him. There's always rumors about Bobby Ryan moving or
so it's a
Craig Anderson wants out and all this.
Yeah, they're a team where looking at them right now, we obviously don't know what they're going to look like when the season starts, whether Bobby Ryan, Eric Carlson, Craig Anderson will even be on the team.
And they still need to sign Stone.
Yeah, so there's a lot to be known, a lot coming from this team for the rest of the offseason, at least in terms of answers of what we're going to get. Even if it's nothing, that's still an answer as to what this team will look like.
After a couple years ago, they were so close, and they just kind of fell in 1 year.
Yeah, that one goal away from the Stanley Cup final, but since then they've just imploded. I mean, you look at the team and
even just money-wise too.
Yeah, they're definitely a budget team at the moment. If you look at them forward-wise, they're definitely not the worst team in the NHL in terms of forwards. Matt Duchene's a very good number 2 center. John Gabriel Pajot's a very good young center. Mark Stone's a great first-line winger. Bobby Ryan, even though he's not obviously worth the $7.25 he's making over the next 4 years, he's still a good middle 6 winger.
And Duchene wanted out in Colorado because they were so bad. He's probably going to want the same thing in Ottawa now because I don't know he might just
He only has 1 year left on his deal,
so he might just
I'd be kind of surprised if he wasn't moved at the deadline anyway.
Yeah.
Even without him asking for a trade, obviously we don't know what's going on there. Depth-wise, they don't really have much at all offensively. But
they need to try to get something out of Carlson or Bobby Ryan. Or even if they trade away Craig Anderson, just something to help them.
Well, yeah, they're at a point now where this season doesn't matter in any way, even in terms of a draft pick, because they don't have their own first round pick this year. So really, this season's just all about getting a good return on a bunch of guys, and Eric Carlson, Bobby Ryan being included in that deal, probably getting them less.
And they have a bunch of free agents.
Yeah, so there's a lot of guys who they could move as rentals at the deadline, which we've seen in the past. It can be surprising how much teams can get for them. So they still have an opportunity to potentially get good returns from some of these guys. I think Matt Duchene could get a big return back. Now, obviously not to the level that they got from the level that the Avalanche got from that 3-team trade, but they still will be able to accumulate picks.
And they have to do better than that Hoffman trade they made earlier in the offseason.
Yeah, that was a move that they made just to make a move. They had to get rid of him, so they just wanted to get rid of him as quickly as possible. I expect them to get better returns out of guys. I don't think Pierre Dorian's the best general manager in the world. No. He's not great, but I still don't think he's as clueless as some of the other Canadian general managers. One of them we'll get to rather shortly. But they're defensively, they are once they trade Eric Carlson, if they do, they're a tire fire. Cody Cece's a good second pair defenseman. Thomas Chabot's a good young defenseman, could potentially become a first pair defenseman. Outside of that, there's nothing there. Goaltending wise, obviously, it's just Craig Anderson, Mike Condon. Anderson asked for a trade, so we don't even know who the goaltenders will be for the Senators coming this October. So who do you have?
At 7, moving on, I have the Montreal Canadiens.
I do not have the Montreal Canadiens.
Who do you have at 7?
I have the Detroit Red Wings at 7.
Okay. Why do you have them at 7?
So Detroit, there's just not a lot there. And in terms of goaltending, I think they perhaps have the worst goaltend. They have Jimmy Howard and Jonathan Bernier. Neither of them are inspiring in any way to me whatsoever. And they're just a team that has very, very little in terms of elite talent. A couple of the other teams, I think, have guys who could carry them.
They have Dylan Larkin, but...
Yeah, Dylan Larkin's a good first-line player, but outside of that, there's really nothing. I mean, Henrik Zetterberg is still around. He's he's just not what he once was. He's a decent player at this point, but he's nowhere near what he was. Gustav Nyquist is a good player. I mean, they have a couple of decent forwards, but there's really, in terms of that, in terms of high-end talent, really it's only Dylan Larkin at the moment.
True.
So that's why I have them at the 7th spot. Who do you have at 7?
I had Montreal.
Montreal.
And that could obviously change because Price could be on his head, and that can move him up a bunch.
I didn't even have them at 6. I actually had them at 5. The Canadiens.
I was debating between where to put them, but I just felt that it kind of depends on Pacioretty too if they move him, because there's always these rumors that he's gone. I mean, he's gone at 2019-2020 UFA, so he could be moved by the trade deadline or at some point. And they also have Drouin, but outside of that, they don't have that much. Yeah, they have Shea Weber, but he's hurt again. He's out in his season. Yeah, he's in his 30s. So
yeah, if I could jump in here just on where I put the Canadiens, I have them at 5, and I only have them there because I'm just under the assumption that Carey Price is going to play out of his mind.
Right.
Because he always seems to just kind of go back and forth between having a great season and having an injury-filled season. And he had an injury-filled season last year, so I'm just assuming he's going to stand on his head and just carry this team.
Because he's one of those goalies that can completely change a team. But
yeah, he's someone who could take a team like the Canadiens, who outside of him is definitely probably talent-wise the 7th best team in this division, but I think he could take them to the 5 spot. And me saying them at 5, that's not me saying they're going to make the playoffs, because they're not.
Because even if he gets hurt, their backup is
Antti Niemi.
Yeah,
Antti Niemi. So this is not a talented team at all.
No.
I mean, in terms of, like I was saying with Detroit, they don't have much high-end talent at all.
And they've been wanting to move Pacioretty for a while now.
Yeah, so I still think a deal might be done there. I don't know. It's one of those things where it was kind of similar to the Jeff Skinner situation, where you hear, oh, maybe there's going to be a deal. A deal's close, and then just nothing's happened since. So, I think he's obviously their captain. He's one of their better players at the moment. With him dealt, that does downgrade them a peg, but I just see the goaltender position, Carey Price just carrying them. And when I say carry them, I mean past these other. Yeah. I mean, the Atlantic Division has a lot of bottom-feeding teams. And
they do.
And I think Carey Price is someone who could elevate the Canadiens past those teams.
Right. But it all depends, because you already kind of have an idea where the top 3 teams are going to be. Mm-hmm. That's just kind of where the other ones would fall, and that would have to be wild card, and that's most likely going to be a metropolitan team.
Mm-hmm. I definitely think so. So who do you have at number 6?
I think we have the same number 6. I have the Buffalo Sabres.
I also have the Buffalo Sabres at number 6.
I think they drafted pretty well this past draft.
Yeah, obviously it was difficult to make the wrong pick at number 1, but they made it. So.
And they also obviously have Jack Eichel, and they made the trade earlier this season to get Sherry. It's not really much, but they made the trade.
It's a guy. It's a middle 6 guy.
Yeah, middle 6 guy to help them. Now they have, I guess, a number 1 pair defensively.
Yeah, I think I look at them just throughout their entire lineup. There's a lot of young guys who I think can really make a difference for them. I think Casey Middlestad's another guy who could be a solid middle 6 center as a rookie this upcoming season. Rasmus Dahlin, I think, is definitely a first pair guy, even just coming into his rookie year. I mean, he was already perhaps the best defenseman in the 3rd best league in the world in the Swedish Hockey League this past season.
Mm-hmm. And he'll probably be with Ristolainen, who was already their top guy for a while.
Yeah. So I mean, Ristolainen, I don't necessarily think he necessarily has deserved the ice time he's had. It's just a matter of being on a team that's this bad. You kind of have to throw the guy out there.
Throw him out there.
This is a team that, to me, when we're talking about these bottom few teams, could be anywhere on the list. They could be last, they could be 5th, they could be anywhere in between. And mainly because again, we just keep going back to these goaltenders. Carter Hutton is going to be their starter.
Yeah, they don't have
Leonard signed with the Islanders.
Yeah.
So Carter Hutton's their starter.
Yeah.
And he had a career year last year with the Blues, but he's never really been that guy before.
Yeah.
He's 32. There's just
nothing really there.
Yeah, so they're a team that I definitely they're obviously on the rise. They have a lot of great young players.
Yeah, they do. It's just that
and
goaltending situation, kind of like we were talking about last week, last podcast with some of the Metro teams that depend on goaltending. This is another one where it goes on goaltending.
But I think they're
and it's still. I still think, as well as Jack Eichel was coming up or whatever, he's due for another big year that can help him. But
yeah, he's someone who he's making $10 million a year right now, and he hasn't necessarily.
Obviously, they lost Ryan O'Reilly, but
yeah. So Eichel is a guy who you're paying for what you expect to happen in the future. He has been about a point per game. His past few years, he's had quite a few injuries.
Yeah.
So he's still that number one center. They have that number one guy, which I think a lot of these other teams that are in the cellar of this division don't necessarily have. So again, that's something that if Jack Eichel has that career year, they definitely could push for that 5 spot.
Right.
I don't think they're necessarily a team that could really
no.
Make the playoffs, but I think that they could move. Because
Eichel isn't like a player like McDavid who can completely change a team. Kind of. He's more of he needs people around him to be the dynamic player that he is.
Yeah, and they're a team who is still rebuilding, obviously. And you look at the first round next year; they have conditional firsts from both San Jose and St. Louis, and both conditions are that those two teams make the playoffs, and they both very much look like they will. So they could very well have 3 first rounders next year. So they're definitely a team to look out for in the future.
Right.
And then at 5, I guess we have
the opposite of what we just had.
Yeah, so at 5,
this is where I just felt, just because I felt it could be a big year for Larkin. I just felt maybe their bigger players could kind of step up, but it's one of those things where you can really see any of these bottom teams being anywhere.
And I again back to what
and that's so difficult. Atlantic, I could see them maybe pushing.
Yeah, it's.
I mean. It's not the best goaltenders, but if you look at Buffalo, like we just talked about, not the best, and some of the others, it's just not real.
It's not very inspiring, yeah. But
and they just signed Mike Green again, who can help on power play wise, but outside of that, there's not much defense there. But
I think the Canadians I put at 5, obviously, like I said, solely for Carey Price essentially, but I think that's something where, like you just said, the top end of this division is so great with those two teams, with even if you include the Bruins.
Yeah.
That Carey Price is someone who could steal a few games against those teams, whereas I don't think any other team really has much of a shot against any of those top 3 teams.
Yeah.
So that's really the reason why I have the Canadians there. And with the Red Wings, I don't see a lot of high-end talent.
Yeah.
If Dylan Larkin can have a career year, like you said, Thomas Vanek they signed, maybe he can have another. He's a guy who every year it seems signs a 1-year contract and then gets dealt at the deadline. They're another rebuilding team, and
I just kind of had them where they finished off last year at 5th in the Atlantic. So
it was. You look at the Atlantic from last season, and they were very close. There was a lot of teams just.
They're 2 points away from 5 and 6.
Yeah, so these teams, the standings here really necessarily matter outside of draft picks in terms of the order.
Exactly.
But at the end of the day, I think the Canadians will be up here just because of that goaltending.
Right.
And now we move into the more interesting stuff here.
Who do you have at 4?
So at 4, I have the Florida Panthers.
I have the Boston Bruins.
You have the Bruins at 4.
Yeah. I kind of felt...
Explain.
I know they have... they always have Bergeron and Marchand who are always great, and they still have Tuukka, but there's still just something I just feel like I don't know. I just felt like Florida improved more this offseason with Hoffman, and Boston hasn't really done much. They lost Rick Nash. They lost Riley Nash.
So I think
I don't know.
They
their
definitely
depth-wise, I felt they kind of fell off a little bit.
They definitely fell off some depth-wise. I see again just that line, that Bergeron, Pasternak, and Marchand line is just so great that they really carry them through.
And you have Tuukka in net.
Yeah, who's still a good goalie.
Yeah.
He's a little bit inconsistent, but they're just a team who, outside of that top line, there's not a whole lot there in terms of offense. Defensively, they're kind of a middling team.
Yeah.
Torrey Krug's a good defenseman. Zdeno Chara, for as old as he is still useful.
Yeah.
And then you have the two great young players in Charlie McAvoy and Brandon Carlo.
Right.
So I still have them at 3. I definitely think that the gap is closed between them and the Panthers. But yeah, I think that they're still.
But at the same time, it depends for the Panthers on how well Luongo does.
Yeah,
because Luongo played great last season. You don't know with his at 39 if that's something that he can continue for next season.
Yeah, that could certainly be their stumbling block. Like you said, 39 years old. He was fantastic last year, and it wasn't enough to get to the playoffs. Is Hoffman really enough to give them that next step?
I think
with
they helped,
also declining of Luongo. I'm not really sure.
No, but at the same time, I feel like Hoffman helps them more offensively. So that's where I kind of put them at.
Yeah, I in terms of offense, the Panthers are fairly underrated. I mean, Huberdeau, Barkov, Hoffman, Trocheck, Bukestad, Dadonov. There's a lot of guys.
They were very close to knocking the Flyers out of the playoffs last season.
Yeah, there are a lot of guys offensively for the Panthers that do give you that pause in putting the Bruins ahead of the Panthers necessarily. But I think they're a playoff team. I would have them as
and then
the second
other
wild card
downfall
team.
is they don't have the best defense. Florida.
Yeah, I mean, Aaron Ekblad had a great rookie season. Yeah. Since then, he hasn't been as good.
And Keith Yandle's getting older. He's not where he was before.
Yeah, he doesn't necessarily have the speed he had before. But looking at everyone else here, I mean, Alex Petrovic's a decent third pair guy. There's a lot of third pair guys after that. It really does come down to the goaltending of Roberto Luongo, and if the top end talent that the Panthers have can carry them through.
Right.
And I don't necessarily think
the
they
top
really can.
4 in the Atlantic kind of improve, where you could possibly see one of them get one like the second wild card or something like that.
Yeah, I definitely think that there will be one wild card team from each of the divisions in the Eastern Conference. I think the Panthers will get a wild card spot. I think they'll make the playoffs this season. I definitely think they improved. And then we get into
the opposite of what we kind of had. I had
I mean
I
guess
Florida
we kind of
3 and you had Boston at 3.
Yeah, again, I just see that they still have that top line together. They're not separating the three of them.
No.
Bergeron also spent a pretty big chunk of the season injured, so I think they could even improve just in that.
Right.
Outside of that, I mean,
they
Riley
were
Nash.
They were one of the harder teams near the end of the season.
Yeah, Riley Nash was a decent sized loss just in that they weren't a team with a whole lot of depth anyway. At least offensively.
Yeah, Rick Nash wasn't the biggest loss either, but he's still
lost,
but he was only a guy that they brought in.
They brought in the deadline, so they did play well before that. But yeah, I think that they're still. I think they'll probably go down a few points.
Yeah.
I don't think they'll have the season they had last year, especially with just how much better those top two teams are. But I still see them as the number 3 team.
Yeah. So then that means go into 2, which means probably have the same thing here with the Toronto Maple Leafs.
I have the Toronto Maple Leafs at 2. I think it's really close between them and the Lightning.
It is, just because obviously the biggest target they got with John Tavares. They were already the highest scoring offense without him.
Yeah,
one of the highest scoring offenses last season.
When you look at the offense of the Toronto Maple Leafs, I mean, John Tavares is going to be is centering. I guess you could call it the first line.
Yeah.
Supposedly he's been promised to play with Mitch Marner, so Marner's numbers are going to go through the roof, even though they were already great last year.
You already have Austin Matthews, who's playing great. You have all these young players who are already doing so well.
The top 6 is presumably Tavares with Marner and Marleau, and then you have the same line of last year with Matthews, with Hyman, and William Nylander, which I don't know if there are very many teams, if any at all, that can really match that in terms of a 1-2 punch at center, especially.
No.
And even if you go to the third line, I mean, Nazem Kadri was a 30-goal scorer last year.
That's where a team with more depth would be better at depth with that. But that's where, with Boston, the team that's going to be like right below them or whatever, it's one of those things where the top line could probably the Martian line could probably take off the top line of Tavares.
They can negate
each
other.
But
then you have
depth-wise,
the rest. Yeah.
that's where Toronto would take it.
Yeah, so that's why I would definitely have Toronto ahead of Boston.
And they did sign Tyler Ennis too. Not that it's the biggest deal, but they did sign him.
Yeah, I think he's probably more of a healthy scratch guy most of the time. Yeah. Defensively is their problem. Morgan Riley is probably a number 2 defenseman, a very good defenseman.
He is.
Past that, I mean, Jake Gardner's a second pair guy. And then the rest are pretty much third pair guys. Travis Dermott's a good young defenseman. Maybe he could take a step up this season. But it really comes down to Frederik Andersen and if he can repeat that season.
Yeah.
So
the past 2 seasons he's done really well. So I just kind of hope that he can continue it into next season.
And if he can continue it, then the defense doesn't look so bad. And at the end of the day, no matter how poorly the defense plays, that offense can outscore.
And if anything, Tavares helps them better defensively too.
Yeah, I mean, Tavares is a guy who is great two-way. He can do it all. So, I think this is definitely a team who, special teams-wise, along with 5-on-5, they are going to be dominant.
Yeah.
But the difference...
Especially that power play, that would be kind of dominant too.
Oh, yeah. They can have 2 fantastic units, 2 number 1 units on any other team. So, that's definitely going to be fun to watch. But to me, I still have Tampa Bay in front. And I think it's fairly close.
It is, but just I don't. Well, if there were the rumors that they might get Karlsson, then that goes away for them. But
I think if they get Karlsson, then I think they're a decent amount ahead.
But in order to do that, that's still a headache. Just trying to get the trade to go well for Tampa Bay. But
yeah, I mean, if you do trade for Karlsson, you're also getting rid of a guy like Mikhail Sergachev or perhaps a guy like Braden Point. So, there are some guys that they could lose that would hurt some, but obviously they wouldn't compare to the value that Karlsson brings. But even without Karlsson, even just negating Karlsson as a potential add-on to this team, I still have them ahead of Toronto just because of that defense, even without him.
The defense is already great as it is.
Yeah, Victor Hedman, Ryan
McDonough again.
Stralman, Sergachev. They just have a great defense.
Obviously, the top line... It's probably even better than the top line in Toronto. Maybe it's closer now, but it's just because as they're older players, but going forward, Toronto could have the better.
I think the Lightning. If you go top 6 versus top 6, I'd probably give it to Toronto. Yeah. But Toronto doesn't necessarily have the depth on the wings that. A team like the Lightning do. I mean, Yanni Gourde scored 30 goals as a rookie. You have Alex Killorn. You have Braden Point. There's just a lot of guys here. Tyler Johnson's our third-line center. They could potentially move him.
And Vasilevsky's already so good, and he's only 23.
Yeah, and I think that, to me, if you
they have the edge in goaltending. And
if you just compare forwards and defense, I think it's about a draw.
Yeah.
But I don't trust... Frederik Andersen to the level that I trust Andrei Vasilevsky.
Yeah.
And for Vasilevsky, he's 23 years old and he's already a great goaltender. But he doesn't have as many defensive deficiencies to make up for, whereas Andersen does.
Yeah.
So I think that it will require Andersen to be a better goalie than Vasilevsky, and I don't even know if he can do that, not to mention just equal him.
Yeah.
So I think that's the difference in my mind between these two teams.
They also got Miller resigned again too. There's depth-wise, it's better there.
Yeah,
they always seem to be that Stanley Cup favorite just from the East.
Exactly.
With Pittsburgh, just because of who they have. Stamkos, who's always great every year. You have the usual people. You have Kucherov, who played great last year.
Yeah, in terms of, I think that first line...
And for a team that always has, like, cap issues, they always seem to be able to get over it.
Yeah, they can always work through it.
And still be such as great as a team.
Yeah, so I think that they're they're a team who, if there is a Carlson trade, if they do trade for Carlson, they'll definitely look different.
Yeah.
In terms of there will be guys from this roster, some young guys that are moved, Braden Point, like we mentioned, or Mikhail Sergachev. But with or without it, I think they're just above Toronto.
Yeah.
I could see in the regular season Toronto being above the Lightning, but I just think that in terms of being a Stanley Cup contender, both of them obviously are, but I see the Lightning as being a more serious contender than
they'd have to face each other no matter what. So at some point,
exactly.
So.
All right, so wrap this up here.
Yeah. That one was a little harder to do than the Metro, but next week or next time we'll probably do a team or division out west, Central. Let's go with. So until then, I'll see you then.